Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 123. My name is Victor Vasquez. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast where we talk about movies. We talk about what we liked or didn't like about some of the new films that are coming out in theaters or streaming. I'll offer some recommendations on whether you should check it out or skip it. And then at the end of the podcast, we then decide, is this film timeless? Is it rewatchable and something that you would definitely want to check out in the future? Hope you guys are having a great weekend so far. I mean, movie fans are loving it. I mean, this weekend of April 11th to the 13th, we have 3 new movies out in theaters. It is a great time to be a movie fan. Speaking of those 3 movies, on episode 122 of the Timeless Movie Podcast, I ended up talking about the new film from Universal called Drop. It stars Megan Fahey and Brandon Sklenar, and surprisingly, it was a big hit for me. I enjoyed that movie very much. I had seen so many trailers for it. So if you have not listened to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode 122, go check it out. It's on all platforms, Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. Leave a comment, leave a review. Let me know what you thought about Drop. Am I way off? Is it not that good? Would love to have that interaction with you guys about that movie. Okay, let's go ahead and stop wasting time and jump into episode 123, in which we are talking about 20th Century Studios' newest film, The Amateur. This one is directed by James Hawes, and it stars Rami Malek, Rachel Brosnahan, John Bernthal, Lawrence Fishburne, so many different actors included in this film. Funny enough, though, I actually had not seen a lot of marketing for The Amateur leading up to its release. I think I barely started seeing some of the trailers play before some of the movies that I was watching. I want to say maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I had seen a poster about it, and I was just kind of curious. Okay, what is this movie going to be about? And so once I did see it, it is basically a spy action and kind of thriller type of a movie, and it deals with Rami Malek's character trying to get some type of revenge. And so let's go ahead and dive into some of those non-spoiler thoughts so you can kind of get a little bit of an understanding as to what I enjoyed or didn't enjoy about this movie. All right, guys, now that I checked out The Amateur, I got to say that this movie left me very impressed after I left the theater. The Amateurs is basically a revenge story. And in movies, we have a lot of different types of revenge stories, right? We have, I'll call it a couple of them that just come into my head. I'm pretty sure I'm forgetting some, but you have the likes of John Wick. You have movies like The Northman. There's so many different types of films and styles of movies where they try to explain the aspect of an individual getting revenge. However, where it does kind of really stray off the path is in most of the different types of revenge films, the protagonist has a set of skills where they're really just good at combat, using guns, and being able to fight their way out of situations. What's so different and unique about The Amateur is that Rami Malek's character of Charlie has no skills whatsoever when it comes to fighting, combat, guns. He can't even kill somebody point blank range, even if it's somebody that has done a lot of harm to him. And so you're like, okay, well, what the heck is he going to do? Well, Charlie uses his brain. He sets up different types of traps, and it's just very creative how they were able to go down that path rather than always being accustomed to seeing the protagonist just have the skills to fight and kill and get out of any sticky situation. In this case, Charlie has to use his brain, use the knowledge that he has about, just intelligence and technology overall in order to really find out how he's going to bring justice for what happened to him. And so, again, really enjoyed how that all played out on the screen. It kept me very interested in the story, and it also kept me really focusing on Charlie and seeing, well, is he going to make it out alive? Is he going to be able to make it all the way through the story without getting himself killed? So, really enjoyed that. Let me give you a little synopsis about The Amateur. That way you have a good idea of the setup. This film revolves around Charlie, who is a decoder or cryptographer for the CIA. He works in the decryption and analysis department, and you could tell right from the beginning, he is a very intelligent and smart person. You actually start off with the first scene of him putting pieces together, and you think it's going to be for a car or an engine, but it's actually for an engine for a plane that he has in his garage. And so you could tell that he loves putting things together and puzzles. And then he's also, accompanied by his wife, Sarah, played by Rachel Brosnahan. You kind of see their relationship at the beginning and how kind and sweet they are to each other. And then you find out that Sarah is going on a work trip to London. And so she takes off, and Charlie kind of goes to work. And you, again, get to see a little bit more about how he is as a person at work. And then all of a sudden, a couple days later, he ends up getting the news that his wife was actually killed in a terrorist attack. And so it was a very sad, emotional start to the film. And so immediately you get connected to Charlie. And then Charlie, because of the rage and the emotion that he feels, he ends up doing his own research and finds out, okay, there's 4 individuals that were a part of this terrorist attack. I need to find them and I need to get revenge and justice. He brings this up to his directors, and they basically laugh and tell him, we're not going to send you, Charlie, somebody that is not experienced in the field, to go get your revenge and justice. We'll handle this. And so they basically just reject his whole plea. And so what does Charlie do? He makes his own path in order to get the justice that he deserves for his wife. So that's kind of where I'll leave it off. A lot of different elements kind of play out in the story, but overall, to me, it was a great movie. I had a fun time just watching Charlie set up so many different types of traps and finally get his revenge. And so really awesome stuff. To me, especially when it comes to these types of revenge stories, I think what I appreciate is that we're seeing a protagonist that doesn't have to use his brawn, doesn't have to use his combat skills. He's just using his brain to come up with different types of ways to trap these suspects and, again, figure out complex situations. In my personal opinion, I would highly recommend you guys check this out, especially if you're into the action and spy genre. Maybe set your expectations. You're not going to see a lot of action. You're going to see a lot more of the drama and what Charlie has to go through after he loses his wife. But there's still very much pieces and scenes that will engage you, whether it's just Charlie talking to other characters or him just building the different types of traps that he's going to perform in order to get the answers that he's looking for. So again, my recommendation, check this one out in theaters if you have one close to you. And again, let me know what you think about The Amateur. All right, those are all of my non-spoiler thoughts of The Amateur. Let's go ahead and start diving into some spoiler territory and talk about pros and cons. If you have not seen The Amateur and you do not want to be spoiled, jump out of the video, watch the movie, come back in, and then in the comments, let me know, do you agree or disagree with some of my pros and cons? All right, hopefully that's enough time for you guys to get out before you start getting spoiled, but here we go. First pro for me of The Amateur is Charlie's progression as a character. It's not anything extravagant, but I really enjoyed how his character changed. At the beginning, like I mentioned before in the non-spoiler thoughts, Charlie's a very soft-spoken, very polite, and a very analytical type of individual. He loves to figure out problems and puzzles. And so he kind of keeps to himself, always thinking, always in his mind. And so you also not only get to see his analytical side, but you also get to see his physical side because he ends up getting trained by Colonel Hendo, who is actually played by Lawrence Fishburne. And he tries to train him. He tries to show him all the different types of abilities that he needs to be prepared for in the field. And Charlie's just not like that. And so he doesn't know how to fight somebody with his hands. He doesn't know how to take a life, which is going to be one of the key parts in order for him to get revenge. And he can't even pull the trigger on different individuals when it's probably going to be necessary. And after he finds that out, again, you start seeing, well, how the hell is he going to do it? Well, as the story plays along and every single suspect that he ends up finding, he sets them up for a trap. And, the first individual that gets stuck in a trap, it doesn't go well at all. The individual actually escapes from his little trap because, again, Charlie was not comfortable with having to kill them. And so he lets them go. They end up running out into the street and then they end up getting run over. And so Charlie gets lucky on his first interrogation and trap. But as the movie goes along, Charlie starts getting more experience. He starts getting more confident. And you see that by the third act when he faces the final individual, the man, the antagonist that actually killed his wife. That this is really his final form, if that makes sense as an analogy. You see Charlie with full confidence. He has his entire game plan set up, and he even allows himself to get captured just to get in front of the final antagonist. And so you see a complete change from Charlie. And it's not like he's more arrogant or more talkative. Instead, he's just more confident in his approach and he's not as nervous. And he knows, hey, I'm not the one killing these individuals. They are killing themselves for not giving me the information that I'm looking for about my wife. And so, really cool stuff. Again, I appreciated how he was able to kind of go through that change. And then what's even funnier is that at the beginning of the movie, Sarah, his wife, ends up telling him, like, they're having a phone conversation and Charlie's kind of giving a little factoid about London, about different places. And Sarah's like, how do you know so much if you've never traveled the world? And that's another thing that you get to see in Charlie's story. He gets to travel to so many different cities, so many different countries as he's going through to get revenge for his wife. And so, again, I really enjoyed that whole kind of perspective of seeing Charlie go from, again, not being forced to have to really be physical and be forced to do a different approach. Rather, he's just going to stick with his strengths. I'm going to set up traps. I'm going to use my mind to get the justice that my wife deserves. And so, again, really enjoyed that whole progression of Charlie's arc in this film. All right, second pro for me, this may not sound significant for most of you, but for me, I caught on to it and I really appreciated it, which is the setting of all the different types of countries and cities that Charlie actually goes to around Europe. I really enjoyed how they highlighted each city, even if it was for a couple of minutes, just to kind of show you how different each city was. Now, a lot of spy and action movies do this, right? First one that comes up, Mission Impossible. You have John Wick as well. You have these movies that have the protagonist going and traveling to different types of locations, and it's always really cool when they show that set piece from from like a drone or like a eagle's eye view of the new city that they're at. But those films don't really show how different each city is, but the amateur does. And how it does that is, it kind of shows Charlie exploring the city and showing you how different the lifestyles are. Like in the first city that he goes to is Paris, France. He's at cafes and coffee shops and little apartments, very touristy. So nothing crazy there. But then he jumps to Marseille, France. And there you see a complete 180. You see graffiti on the wall. You're in the nightlife there. It's all dark. There's a lot more people just around the street just drinking. And it's, again, a completely different vibe and environment. Then he also gets to travel to Turkey and the coastline of Turkey, and that's more peaceful. Less folks around, no tourists, all locals there that live by the water. And so, again, it was just for small bits of the movie, but I really enjoyed those settings and set pieces. Again, it really felt like Charlie was actually traveling the world and finding different ways in order to get the answers that he was looking for, to find the culprits or trying to torture and kill the individuals that murdered his wife. And so, again, a very small detail, but I really appreciated that they actually showed what cities Charlie was moving to and actually made them look very different from each other. Okay, and then last pro that I had is going back to Charlie and his smarts. I really enjoyed the detective work and the technology that they used in this film. Very much like other spy and action movies, there's always something very cool that they're able to pull off in the film. But what I appreciated is just Charlie's analytical mind. There was a scene where he was able to actually break down a simple photo of one of the individuals that's involved in the murdering of his wife. And just by looking at the picture, he's able to figure out what country he's in, what time of day it was, who took the picture, and where were they going to be next. And it was all just from him being a decoder, a cryptographer, being able to break down those types of elements. And it made me feel like I was watching, in a way, scenes of Batman, right? Like if you guys have ever played any of the Arkham games, you have that detective mode. You have ways to kind of recreate crime scenes. And that's something that you would see Charlie do within the movie. And so anything that involved the crime element and using technology to recreate a scene or break down where individuals were going to be, I really enjoyed that. I even really appreciated the way that Charlie was able to actually figure out like how to set some of the traps. Like one individual was on a pool at the rooftop and he was like, okay, well, I'm going to pressurize this entire pool and break it if he doesn't give me the answers. Or he finds out that one of the culprits is allergic to some type of pollen. And so he basically gets them trapped in a specific cell and has the pollen infused into their cage or their little box. And so tries to basically suffocate them to death. And so it's just all that type of detective work and setting up the traps was so unique as compared to other spy action films that again it just stood out to me while I was watching it. All right, those are all the pros that I had in regards to the Amateur. Let me just get to the cons really quick. I don't really have anything negative to say about the movie. If there was one nitpick where I wish I could have gotten more of. So again, it's not really a negative, but more so I loved this piece but wanted more of it. There was a specific part in the film where you have Colonel Hendo. He's actually now tasked with having to chase down and get Charlie. But then at the same time, there's another individual that is tasked to stop Colonel Hendo and figure out what the heck is going on or are there secret missions taking place in Europe. And so it almost seemed that there's going to be like a triangle of three individuals having to kind of stop each other or get around each other. Unfortunately, it was only for like a specific scene in the second act, and then it kind of just fizzled out and it didn't come back. And so that was the only unfortunate part. I would have loved to have more of the film be a part of these three individuals, Charlie, Colonel Hendo, and some other secret agent having to kind of just, pulling off whatever their plan was. All right, that's enough for the cons section of the Amateur. Let's go ahead and jump back into some of the favorite items and elements that we enjoyed about the Amateur. Let me jump into favorite performance. I called out some of the actors that come out in this movie, like John Bernthal. You have Lawrence Fishburne, Rachel Brosnahan, Rami Malek. All of the actors and even side characters played a huge part for making this film very intriguing. But I got to go with Rami Malek as my favorite performance. He actually doesn't have a lot of dialogue, which, again, it isn't a bad thing, right? Because of the fact that he doesn't have to speak so much, you get to see his facial reactions. You get to see the emotion that comes down, especially how hard it was to see him be in pain when he found out that his wife died and having to just see the tears roll down and trying to keep his composure, but he couldn't. And then seeing him be rejected by the CIA after he came up with the entire plan of who are the culprits and how he's going to bring them down. So all these different elements that Rami Malek had to put on for the performance of, again, a man that was scarred for life. He lost his wife. He lost the person that, he loved more than anything. And now he has to live a life alone, essentially. And you could see that as he would go. There'd be times where he would be in the shower in his house after his wife died. And again, he wouldn't say anything, but he would just be sitting there or, in the bathroom. And you could just tell that he was in a specific mode of depression because that one person that he was so used to being with or hearing is not there anymore. So really incredible performance by Rami Malek. Again, I really enjoyed it. Again, maybe other folks will tell me in the comments like, hey, it wasn't anything special. I've seen better. I'm not saying it's the best dramatic performance I've ever seen. I'm pretty sure Rami Malek has performed better in other roles, but at least in this kind of a film, he at least portrayed that emotion of him being hurt so much because of the loss of his wife that he had to find other ways to fill in that hole. So again, really enjoyed that performance. This kind of leads me into my favorite scene, and it obviously is going to include Charlie. There was so many that I could choose from. He has great conversations with John Bernthal's character. He has conversations with the other individual, Inkeline, who is one of the secret agents for, I believe it's Russia or Turkey, that has been helping him throughout the movie. He even has a great conversation with Lawrence Fishburne's character of Colonel Hendo. And so there's a lot of different types of connections with other characters that Charlie has. But I think my favorite one is actually with the antagonist. The individual actually shot and killed Charlie's wife. Actor is Michael Stolberg. And the conversation is basically the third act. This is the final meeting. This is the final culprit that Charlie has to basically take out. And they just have a very intense conversation, not in regards to yelling at each other, more so a very intelligent conversation too, because in this situation, Michael, who's playing the antagonist, ends up telling Charlie, hey, I did not plan or intend to have to kill your wife. That it was the only way that I was able to get out of my sticky situation that I was in when I was performing this terrorist attack. And then he even puts it back on Charlie and says, look, killing somebody obviously takes something away from you and it takes a piece of you every single time. He goes, but you've killed 3 of my team members, and you've done it in a way where you could take that blood off of your hands. You're giving them the choice to kill themselves. You're making them look like rats in your little trap or maze. And so it was very interesting, that little back and forth that the antagonist had with Charlie, until obviously Charlie got the upper hand with his entire game plan. So that whole conversation was one of my favorite scenes, of just Charlie facing off against the final culprit. Don't want to spoil too much, because I do want you guys to at least experience it if you are interested in checking out The Amateur. Okay, and then favorite shot, weirdly enough, even though there was a lot of great set pieces and settings that were included in The Amateur, there wasn't a lot of great cinematic shots that I can point to. But if there was one that I really liked that would kind of, I guess, represent my idea of The Amateur, you have this one scene after Charlie is able to pull off a cool and intriguing plan to stop the antagonist from either killing him or getting away. And so he's able to have him be captured, taken to jail. And then at the end, you see him go out onto the balcony of the boat, and then the camera just zooms out, and then you just see like a bunch of different types of CIA agents and secret agents all around, a helicopter shooting a spotlight, and then you just see the spotlight go right on Rami Malek and the boat as a whole. And I don't know, it's something about him almost looked like, yeah, now Charlie is not just a decoder. He's now a secret agent. He's the one leading this entire plan. He's looking all confident. And again, going back to my first pro, where you see the progression of Charlie. At the beginning, he was a confident guy, but he looked very to himself. Now, just his body language itself was very kind of like letting the world know, yeah, I finally got justice for my wife, Sarah. So that one shot was my favorite of the film, and happened right towards the end of The Amateur. All right, everybody. That is all of the pros and cons and favorite things that I enjoyed about The Amateur. Let's go ahead and jump into the final segment. Let us talk about whether The Amateur is a timeless movie. Now, I enjoyed everything about this movie. I thought it was unique. I thought it was clever with what it was trying to do from this revenge story for Charlie. But if I had to say if this is timeless, I will say that as of today, The Amateur is not a timeless movie. And it just misses it. Only because, again, if I were to go back and I would say, okay, I want to watch a spy or action movie or revenge story, which one would I choose? Would I choose this, or would I choose John Wick? Unfortunately, I would choose John Wick, because that film just speaks to me a lot more. And obviously the action element of it makes me be able to kind of rewatch that again, because there's so much fighting and action going on with John Wick. He's pulling off so many different things that there's little details that you could miss. Whereas here, there's not a lot of action. There obviously is the very intricate plans that Charlie is trying to set up. But again, if I was choosing one or the other in those cases, or even let's include Mission Impossible, I feel like I would still gravitate more towards Mission Impossible or John Wick, unfortunately. But that does not mean that I did not enjoy this movie. The Amateur is still a great watch. I highly recommend you guys check this out in theaters. But I care about your guys' opinion. What do you think about The Amateur? Have you had a chance to check it out? If you have, let me know down below in the comments. Would love to have an interaction with you guys to talk about, again, what you thought about the film, and if I was way off on my whole explanation and rambling of this movie. All right, thanks so much for those who stayed all the way through to listen to my full thoughts about The Amateur. My name is Victor Vasquez. This has been episode number 123 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check out next episode, because we're going to be covering the last film of this 3-film weekend in April, and it's going to be about warfare. All right, guys, thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you guys later.